Welcome to this News You Know podcast, episode 6. My name's Mon. I'm signing up stories to talk about disability news in the UK. To explore the stories and give a little opinion. Don't know the news sites out there if it's disability news. Disabled people and news affects our lives is still underreported, and generally, as many of us already know, we're underrepresented in the media. So this podcast is a little effort to try and redress the balance. So, the first story is from The Guardian. Welfare Bill passes final reading as 47 Labour MPs rebel despite further concessions. After a succession of votes and amendments, the bill passed its final common stage by 336 votes to 242. The government's welfare bill will become law after passing its third reading, but 47 Labour MPs still rebelled despite a series of concessions. After a succession of votes and amendments, all of which were defeated, the bill passed its final common stage by 336 to 242. The rebellion of Labour MPs was only slightly below the 49 who opposed it at the second reading last week, when Keir Starmer has been forced to dramatically abandon the bill's central plank of deep cuts to personal independence payments paper to get it through. The bulk of the rebels on Wednesday were from the broad left of the party, all MPs who had submitted or signed amendments. Earlier, Minister made another concession to the bill of an amendment tabled by Labour MP Maria Tidball in an attempt to enshrine safeguards for disabled people. Tidball's amendment called for a series of protections, including that future changes to the personal independence payment be co-produced with disabled people and experts, that the government commit to a clear summer consultation before new eligibility rules for people are applied to new claimants, and that measurement targets be set to close the disability employment gap. Ministers had already scrapped a proposal to tighten pitfalls for existing claimants, removing the clause entirely from the bill last week to avoid a big rebellion. It also delayed changes for new claimants until further review led by Stephen Timms, the Minister for Social Security and Disability, concludes later this year. Speaking at the end of the debate on the important stage of the bill, which was called the Universal Credit and Personal Independence Payment Bill, but has now been renamed the Universal Credit Bill, Tim said the government would accept much of Tidball's amendment, calling it a helpful checklist for changes. This included, he said, Tidball suggested any other amendment phase. If review work with Disability Co-Production Task Force, which would have a majority of representations who either had disability or representatives from disability people's groups. Any conclusions on the review would be based on consensus, he said, adding that the outcome of the review would be central to the legislation that follows. However, Tim said he would not accept Tidball's proposal for a 12-month timetable for the review, saying he did not want to rush a process scheduled to end in autumn 2026. It marks the second time in several weeks that the government has been forced to make big revisions to its controversial legislation after a week of chaos in the Commons that left Starmer's authority bruised. Alongside Tidball's proposal, several backbench and Labour MPs, including Rachel Maskell, tabled out amendments, with Maskell arguing someone who has slipped out of and then back into limited capability for work and workplace activity. age-based criteria either side of April 2026 should still be able to claim the higher rate. The UN Organisation for Disabled People's Rights on Tuesday asked the UK government for details about the impact of its welfare bill, expressing its concern about its potential adverse effects. In a rare intervention, the UN committee said it had received credible information that the welfare changes would deepen the scientific regression and sought information on any measures to address the foreseeable risk of increasing poverty rates among persons with disability if cuts were proposed were approved. Well, as I said in previous episodes, that further welfare bill would go through, and that cuts were inevitable. Unfortunately, it has done. I think the concessions for many disabled people and for our concessions. And actually, like I said in previous episodes, I just feel that it's a pause on what will be later down the line me visited. I think they'll get people talk about 2D system, and that's what it will create for new claimants, which I think will only be true to a certain point, because eventually they'll come back to the table to review HPT for all claimants. I think this is a small series of concessions to get it over the line, and then particularly if the economy doesn't recover in the next 18 to 24 months, I think the same arguments about the need to cut the welfare bill will come back, and I think the plans that they've shelved will be visited, and I think they'll force them through in some shape or form. And I think whoever's in power, even if we get to the end of Labour's cycle, I think certainly if we don't see more attempts by this Labour administration, then certainly the next government, whoever that is in 5 years' time, will definitely revisit this, unfortunately. In terms of the recommendations, I mean, the work on further consultation with disabled people and task force, we've heard all this before, so it's anything new. And there's one thing consulting with disabled people, there's another thing listening to them, and then quite another bringing in legislation that actually looks like what said people are asking for, because the amount of times that we've been consulted in the past on key legislation, and then the bills that come through are watered down versions of what a lot of disabled people said were essential. So we'll see. Fortunately, they'll go through, and we'll just have to keep speaking out and going to the table, and when the consultations do happen, it's the people and organisations be very robust in terms of what they feel their needs are, and kind of framing alternate legislation, although it's not, it shouldn't be any group's job to kind of go that far in terms of trying to act as if they're politicians in terms of shaping frameworks for legislation. But unfortunately, that's what it will have to be in terms of those with the political knowledge of and policy knowledge will have to kind of shape a framework of what they see to be from disability groups alternative workable legislation, and then bring that to any stakeholder meetings and try and go in favour of MPs to try and shape whatever comes forward from the government. So good luck with that, though. But unfortunately, that's where I have to be. The next story is from the BBC. I had to watch Justin Timberlake from a car park. A concert goer who had to watch Justin Timberlake perform from a car park had said music venues need to be doing more to make sure they're accessible to disabled fans. Sarah Stacey had booked tickets to see Timberlake and Ollie Murs headline last week's Stratford City Festival, where they went on sale in September. She said she didn't believe in Timberlake's gig early after watching the start of the set from behind were her friends in the car park because of lack of accessibility inside Chelmsford City Racecourse. Essex venue has apologised and has missed Stacey for advice to prevent similar issues in the future. The 39-year-old from Wickford said she had visited the racecourse before without issue, but experienced meant that she decided not to return to see Ollie Murs perform on Sunday. She says, I've been trying to get tickets for Justin and Ollie at the O2, but disabled tickets are so hard to get. When I saw they were coming to Chelmsford, I thought it was brilliant, she said. However, when she got there, she said there was gravel on the ground, hard flooring, comparable trick got stopped. She said she returned to the car park because that was the only place I'd be able to come see it. She said I stayed for a little bit and got really upset that I wasn't able to see it. I'd been able to see more from people's recordings and in real life. Mrs. Stacey, a diversity inclusion officer, said she had never faced accessibility problems at any music venue before and should be taking the race course upon its offer for every turn and give advice. Charged with the City Race Court said he was deeply disappointed he could not resolve Miss Stacey's issues on Friday night, inclusivity in all our events is something John's for the City Race Course takes very seriously, and so has his previous experience to have a good job record of delivering accessible events. They've said, the Jumps of City Life we enter to deliver more accessible provisions than ever before, which is why we're deeply disappointed we didn't meet your needs. I suppose I can only really respond by saying that it's disappointing that in 2025, some 30 years after the passage of the ZTA, that we're still having these conversations. I think it was a previous episode talked about accessibility and in general, I think we talked about travel and access to trains, but seems nothing really has changed with its DDA or the Equalities. What's amalgamated into Equalities Act, the fact that this is still going on in 25/5, and from a lot of people I hear from, seems to be getting potentially even worse. Certainly in terms of venues and accessibility, especially in terms of the people I know that go to live events, friends who are wheelchair users particularly. I have a few friends had issue with problems. Funny enough, she mentions the OT in the store, the O2 in her story. Friends that went to an O2 venue recently and a serious problem with accessibility because the provision they'd given for disabled fans. The venue was in a blind spot and the view was really, really bad, horrendous. So I think we've taken several steps forward, but it seems like similar to everything as we go in theme, I keep talking about it. It seems to think how badly things have gone backwards in the last 14, 15 years. It seems like that's accessibility is going backwards, not forwards. Story came from the BBC, and it's Greg Wallace faces backlash over awesome defence. Former Master Chef host Greg Wallace is facing criticism from charities and groups working with disabled people after he appeared to link claims of misconduct that he's facing to his autism diagnosis. Several dozens of people have come forward to the BBC News with allegations about Wallace, including inappropriate sexual comments, touching, groping, which he also denies. The presenter defended himself and also said that he's recently been diagnosed with autism, but that BBC bosses has failed to investigate my disability, protect me from what I now as a dangerous environment. One charity told BBC News that autism is not a free pass for bad behaviour, or other groups warn that such remarks risk stigmatising the autistic community. Wallace has been sacked as MasterChef host and report to the accusations expected to be published shortly. He said that he's cleared him from most of the serious sensational allegations. On Tuesday, Wallace wrote on Instagram, "My neurodiversity, now formally diagnosed as autism, was suspected and discussed by colleagues across countless seasons of MasterChef. Yet nothing was done to investigate my disability or protect me from what I now realise was a dangerous environment for over 20 years. On Thursday, Telegraph reported on Thursday that he plans to sue the BBC and the makers of MasterChef for discrimination on the grounds of his autism following his sacking. Friends of Wallace are saying his autism means he can't wear underwear, and that his condition was partly to blame for his alleged inappropriate behaviour. Speaking to BBC News, Seaman Fowler found a sophisticated consultancy, blind ambitions, so there was no excuse for being inappropriate to people in society. Where does it leave us when we use autism as an excuse to behave in whatever way we like? A Commons record by Emily Banks found a new diversity training body, and to be clear, being autistic is never an excuse for misconduct. It does not absolve anyone of responsibility. It certainly doesn't mean that you can't tell the difference between right and wrong. Dan Harris, who runs charity Neurodiversity in Business, and he's himself autistic, so people like him may miss social clues sometimes, but autism is not free of us for bad behaviour. Comments like this stigmatise us and add to water a negative focus on our community. Last year, the charity ambitious about autism dropped Wallace as an ambassador in the wake of original claims against him. The comments have also sparked debate online and radio phones. I think it's a difficult one, really. In terms of the person to themselves, without seeing the full report on the behaviours, etc. and so forth. I think it's accepted wisdom in regards to the individual themselves that there was some inappropriate behaviour that happened. Obviously, it's been sacked from his job now, but I think obviously the stigma argument, I hear the stigma argument, but there's, I think, making purports statements such as autism does not give you free pass, obviously in general that's true, but I think it's very, very difficult because it's got to be nuances argument, but obviously because he's a public figure and because he's in a high ranking role, and as the individual obviously he has to have a level of accountability, and he's been sacked from his job, so he's been found accountable without knowing the individual and knowing exactly the scenarios have been in. You can't really say how his specific diagnosis affected him. What you would say is for someone in his position, who's got to his position, and with his ability and intellect in the field that he's in, there's a level of understanding and knowledge, and yes, there might be obviously issues with social cues, but someone of his level of intellect, it's probably reasonable to understand that although there would be difficulty with social understanding, there's probably enough level of understanding to know that if the things he's accused of are true, and we don't know the full ins and outs of the report, we know there was very serious allegations, but it's been, from what I can surmise, the more serious allegations have been unproved, so you would err on the good side of saying that he has to have a level of understanding. However, when you take it into broad terms and say autism is not an excuse for bad behaviour, yes, no it's not. However, how we present in various individuals and the community, and if it's the only factor that's there, because a lot of the times the comorbidity often with a learned disability, and that has an effect as well on understanding the behaviour. So I think when it's very difficult, because when that is the case, when often people don't have an understanding of what they're doing, and behaviours that we would probably frown upon are not understood by those individuals. Now those individuals aren't Greg Wallace, however, making those conclusions yes, on one hand stigmatises a whole community, but then when you're with individuals who are not in the position that Greg Wallace is in, and you've got, say for instance, the convicts I've just talked about, then the same people that will argue that they need understanding are the same people now that are saying that autism is not an excuse for bad behaviour, which it isn't, but however you need to have more nuanced argument. I think it would have been better for there to be a more nuanced response from the people that are coming forward, because I think often when there is a comorbidity, then there is an issue of understanding there. So in those instances, and we know how people will react to things, because now they'll be saying, well, next time they come across, say for instance, come across an issue where there is a incident with the individual that has less awareness and less capacity than, say for instance, or understanding the social cue than this individual, then the message will be from the latest high-profile incident that, autism is an excuse, because when it was Greg Wallace and he said that it could be his autism, then all these campaigners were saying it's not an excuse. Now, in this other instance, it is. So I think it needs to be a more nuanced debate. That's not me trying to get this individual pass, because I think in this instance, obviously, he's gone through due process and he's been found guilty of some misdemeanors, but I think the message going forward as a general blanket one needs to be more nuanced, because in terms of for other individuals that might not be in the position of Greg Wallace, I think it's going to work both ways. And then in the climate, as I've said before in the previous story, where disabled people do feel demonised, and a lot of the times their issues aren't taken seriously, and we're being accused of being scroungers and making things up and wanting a quote-unquote easy life. I think making knee-jerk reactions like this, I think there could have been a more nuanced statement, for instance, to say, well, in this instance, Mr. Wallace has been found over a serious period of time to have been accused of various things. He's been found guilty by his employers. However, in other instances, autism is that fixed thing. It affects people in different ways, and that they could be other influences that impact it, i.e. learning disabilities, etc. and so forth. Now, in some cases, it may affect social interactions and understanding and where the line is and barriers are, but in this instance, what's been found is that it's been through due process and it's mishap. But to make blanket statements, I think I get why they've said that, but I think it's one of these ones where it can always be misconstrued. Now, going back to Greg Wallace, I mean, the quote from saying that his friends saying that you can't wear underwear, etc. and so forth, and it could be partly to blame for his alleged inappropriate behaviour. I mean, who's to know whether, and I'm not here to defend him, but if it has been underlined, and also there's a culture, we know there's a culture, because he's not the first BBC employee to be accused of inappropriate behaviour or bad behaviour, inappropriate behaviour, bullying, whatever it might be. And we do know, particularly from the U-Tree, that these big stars often are allowed to wield a lot of power and no one says anything to them. And I think if you do have someone with, and again, it now sounds like a defence, but I'm not trying defend, to try to put a different perspective, is that if there is a level of autism there, then and no one is actually looking at it and stepping in and saying his behaviour is inappropriate, and there's a lack of social awareness, etc. and so forth. Remember, they did play a part. We don't know that. And that's not a defence. That's just saying that there could be an issue, and if he's told his employees about his autism, and there's been no appropriate response from the employers, because I think whatever the case, even if it isn't autism, even if he wasn't autistic, I think from what has come out, I think there's a lot of people around that should have stepped in and done more, as is often the case with big stars who show increasing signs of bad behaviour. The office they're often allowed to cross the line several times without over a period of time, without people stepping in to correct them, because they're seen as big stars, and the show can't go on without them. I think that culture in celebrity circles and showbiz, quote unquote showbiz, needs to be corrected as well. And I think this is what happens with when you don't have those things in place. But I think again, it's different qualities, but I think the message from the individual speaking out on behalf of organisations needs to be a bit more nuanced, because I think outside of him as an isolated team, there are instances where autism, LD, etc. and so forth can affect people's social responses to situations, and mean that some of their behaviour may be seen a lot of the time as maybe inappropriate, whatever that may be. So I think in terms of the overall collective, I think things like this come, we don't need knee-jerk kind of statements. I don't get why there was a knee-jerk statement, because it does seem like it is a celebrity that's using impairment as an excuse, and I get it, but I think in the interests of individuals where it is a reason for the diagnosis, is a reason for behaviour that might be seen as inappropriate, I think this doesn't help for the overall collective. The last story is from The Guardian, and it's going news. Disabled in danger of losing all meaning, says Badenoch. And this is Toy by a leader uses speech to criticise the size of welfare state and call for restrictions on disability benefits. Leader for Conservatives Kemi Badenoch said she does not believe 1 in 4 people are disabled and the term is in danger of losing its all meaning, and she used its speech to criticise size of welfare state, but not call for restrictions as to be painful for those suffering conditions, including food intolerances, anxiety and mild depression. She made a speech at the Centre for Social Justice a week after Keir Starmer government scaled back the extent of its costs for disability benefits in the face of huge revolt from backbench Labour MPs and disability rights groups. Backlash continues, with charities saying huge swathes of severely disabled people will be affected by planned universal credit cuts. However, Badenoch said the cuts did not go far enough, with the Conservatives having tabled a proposal to stop sick benefits going to foreign nationals. We now live in a country where 1 in 4 people self-report as disabled, and people receiving disability benefits for having tennis elbow. I know some may disagree with me, but I do not believe that 1 in 4 to be considered disabled without the term losing all meaning. Britain clearly cannot afford to support 1 in 4 disabled people. 1 in 4 people classify themselves disabled. We're going to draw the line in the sand about which conditions the state gives support out for. Food intolerances are a medical fact, but they're not something you should be handing out. You class 4, that is not a joke, that actually happens. She says, an anxiety, mild depression or rare condition, that doesn't mean these suffering should be signed off. Because of taxpayer. Bednar's claims appear to be based on the recent information from parliamentary questions about NHS data, which lists food intolerance as a condition and that qualified some people for multiple paid by personal independence payments. People, but the numbers involved extreme support. Because certainly it also such as all that young people do not appreciate the value of work and stress. The UK needed to get stronger work ethic. You need to go out, get a job, look after yourself, look after your family. You should be in a default position. She said the Centre for Social Justice think tank had published reports saying restricting disability benefits for some conditions would save £9 billion, which would be used to fund better treatment for people with mental health difficulties. Wow. Well, what did I just say? A few stories ago, we've got the next government will bring in the level of cuts that the Labour government have just scaled back from. So these welfare cuts are coming people regardless. And what does that say? If it's all the government, they definitely would. Well, it's ready for the horse's mouth. And if it's bad enough, if she stays a course or Genvic or James Cavalier again, whoever comes in, will definitely reform. If they ever get into power, the cuts will come. I mean, the term disability loses all meaning. I mean, it's this typical right-wing drivel, really. Food intolerance, etc. and so forth. The disabilities and not disabilities, health conditions, who cares really? Do people get the support they need? Mild depression, I mean, what is mild depression? Depression is depression, and obviously there's levels to it, but those individuals obviously have a mental health team and have to have a GP or a GP that's active, that's obviously making that call. Politicians aren't doctors, and again, I'll go back to what I said in the earlier story. Until we get a system that looks at the frameworks about how to get people into meaningful work, the education that fits into a system that will give them meaningful employment, and a living wage, or real living wage, then none of this is going to change. The fact that we've got race to the bottom, the fact that wages have been stagnant over the last 15 years, the fact that cost of living's gone up, the fact that if you're a young person, you're saddled with it, if you go to university, you've got to get a job, economy, the rental market is absolutely on the floor. Before you even think about the chances of young people getting the property ladder themselves, it's absolutely ridiculous. So what do you expect when you've got races to the bottom? You're going to have, even people who do work, they're going to work themselves into an early grave, health problems, etc. and so forth, mental health problems. And the ball culture we do have, the gig economy. It's, if it's fit for work, you're not going to be fit for work for long. And, until they fix issues with the economy and issues with employment, etc. and so forth, and this is going to be a spiral. There's no easy solutions, but it's what we pay them for, and to be honest, the only thing they're interested in is offering low paid work to individuals and blaming them when they get ill. But this rhetoric from the Tory government is just nothing new. We've been in this go out there and get a job stuff, isn't that just Norman to get on your bike from the 80s with Thatcher? It's just all the same recycles. That's right, nonsense really, to be honest. But fair enough if there's employment out there, and that's not to say that there's always going to be people there. The odd individual, perhaps, doesn't have to decide to work, but it's life. There's plenty of people in jobs that don't necessarily have to decide to work, so I don't know. I just think that the vast majority of people in the welfare system are there for a reason, and even those that perhaps support go out to work don't get the right support, and that's the issue with that whole scheme. Even the people in job seekers, there isn't support out there. I mean, unless you're I know people around me that have been looking for work, and they've worked all their lives, and they've put a few over certain unless you're looking for kind of certain type of work. Say for instance, if you're a graduate and you're looking for a graduate type job, then DWP and the schemes that surround them aren't really going to help you find employment. They're not there for that. They're there for entry level, basically entry level jobs. They can help support you to get those potentially, but anything above that, anything at graduate level and above, say for instance you've made redundant to 20-30 years and you're in a manager level and above, job set's not going to help you retraining, get another job. So even those instances, the system's not fit for purpose for people that have got work history. And the argument will be, well, you've got the ability to look for yourself and support yourself, but that's not what the system should be there for. It should be good to everybody in it. Like I said about the flexibility, I know the system works for everybody, because the system works for nobody, so you can make it pay to work. So anyway, thanks for listening.